Welcome back to Faith on Film, where we raid your church library in search of the good stuff. And welcome to a new tradition, Jesus Movie Lent.
Whether the movies actually believe in his divinity or not, you cannot deny that the life and times of Jesus of Nazareth has been an inspiration to filmmakers time immemorial. Practically everybody has taken a shot at bringing this story to the big screen or the small screen in one way or another. It's practically its own genre. So, every time the season of Lent rolls around, we are going to be looking at a collection of Jesus movies, because watching every single one of them will take years.
Do you have any kind of rhyme or reason to what we're watching?
Well, since you asked, I have long held this theory that the best films made about Jesus are made in Italy.
Really?
Really? There are many top 10 lists on the subject, Time Magazine, Christianity Today, and so on, and a certain collection of movies have a tendency to always make the top 10, or at the very least make the honorable mentions. And it just so happens that they were made by Italian filmmakers. So, without further ado, this is Italian Jesus Lent.
Padre nostro che sei nei cieli, sia santificato il tuo nome, venga il tuo regno, sia fatta la tua volontà, come in cielo così in terra. Dacci oggi il nostro pane quotidiano, e rimetti a noi i nostri debiti, come noi li rimettiamo ai nostri debitori.
Our first selection was made in 1975 by director Roberto Rossellini. It's called The Messiah. No, not that one. No, not that one either. Don't make me come over there.
Maybe for simplicity's sake, we should just call it its Italian title, Il Messia.
Works for me.
Il Messia.
Il Messia. Rossellini is sometimes credited as being the father of Italian neorealism. What's neorealism, you may ask? It's a movement in film that shifts focus to, well, more realistic settings and depictions. Rather than lush, lavish sets on a soundstage, they would film in actual cities, usually run-down parts of cities. Rather than a cast of big names, they would usually go with non-professional actors, often poor people, and just film them being themselves in a given context. Even if you've never heard of Italian neorealism, there's a decent chance you've heard of its premier example, Bicycle Thieves. It's sometimes called the greatest movie ever made.
I thought that was Citizen Kane.
Different lists, different people, opinions.
Fair enough. Another thing that's interesting about Rossellini is his father actually built one of the city of Rome's very first cinemas. And the young Rossellini just drank in everything about the movies that he could, working in his father's theater.
He also directed several movies that deal with religious topics, including The Flowers of St. Francis, The Acts of the Apostles, yes, as in the book of the Bible, St. Joan at the Stake, and The Man with a Cross, despite not being religious himself. He also directed several historical pieces, including The Taking of Power by Louis XIV and Socrates. So, it's not that surprising that he would get around to making one about Jesus at some point.
It's true. And it just so happened that this ended up being the final film of his career. He died 2 years after it was made. So, how does one of Italy's finest directors tackle the story of Jesus? That's what we're here for, isn't it?
Well, I suppose yes.
So, let's see. Well, this movie doesn't start, at least the way you would expect a typical Jesus movie to start. You usually expect these things to start at the Nativity, but no, we're going way back further to the good old days of the Old Testament, specifically when the people of Israel are bothering Samuel about, pretty please, can we have a king?
Wait a minute, we haven't even gotten to the checklist yet. First up is exposition. Now you may continue.
Why, thank you. And this is certainly different. One of the very first scenes of this movie is a young boy relieving himself in a hole in the desert.
Yeah. What?
Oh yeah, one of the first scenes of this movie is a little kid going off to relieve himself in the desert, and he gets killed by a Philistine soldier. That was rude.
While this movie doesn't depict the Book of Judges, it does convey pretty quickly the chaotic times that pre-monarchical Israel lived in and why they would feel the need for a king. After all, when they're operating as 12 disparate states, they don't have the manpower or resources to repel enemies like the Philistines. So it would make sense why they want a central figurehead to gather around.
So we start with the people asking Samuel for a king. And I gotta say, I do like how passionate this actor who plays Samuel is in trying to convince the people of Israel that they don't really know what they're asking for. This actor is very passionate in his arguments, and he actually does build a good case against monarchies.
Of course, he does eventually relent, and then we see Saul being appointed king, and then the narrator informs us that the line of kings continually gets corrupted over time, and that the people always were hoping for a just king, a righteous king, a Messiah. And that's not how I would have explained the significance of the Messianic office, but it's not only effective, it's quite clever.
Yeah, no, it really works. The culmination of all these bad kings is none other than King Herod the Great. Now, this King Herod the Great is, well, he starts off already pretty sickly. This Herod is on his last days, and he knows it, which is all the more reason why he's threatened when the Magi show up and say, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews?" There's another king. I'm near the end of my reign. This is bad. Of course he's going to go completely infanticidal right away.
It should also be noted that the nativity portion is centered almost entirely around Herod and his actions. We do see the adoration of the Magi, but only briefly, and it's our first time ever seeing Joseph, Mary, or Jesus. For the most part, this is all about Herod, to contrast the bad king with the good one that we're still expecting. And they do pull from extra biblical sources, good ones this time, unlike the 56 Ten Commandments, to round out Herod's final days. This includes ordering the slaughtering of everyone who celebrates his death, and his own son's execution. This Herod's going down swinging.
Isn't the historical Herod usually considered a kind of paranoid weirdo anyway?
Yep. Paranoid, bloodthirsty weirdo.
So it works. Then after his death, Rome divides his kingdom up into 4 little sections and gives them to his different surviving sons. And the one we get to focus on is King Herod Antipas.
Antipas is used as basically a foil for John the Baptist, who we should probably talk about now because they're never seen apart.
It's true. They really aren't.
This movie opts to skip Jesus' baptism, so we don't actually see John for quite a while. We mostly hear about him. In fact, we even get that scene where 2 of his disciples come to Jesus asking if the latter is the Messiah or if they should wait for someone else before we ever see John. And, okay, just gotta get this out of the way. John's hair is the most 70s thing about this movie.
Yeah, but at least it does kind of fit in with his wild man persona.
When we do actually meet John, he and Antipas are carrying on conversations, and Herod Antipas likes to think he's controlling the discussion, to which John replies, "You feel in charge?" But not in those words.
This Herod Antipas is very much a figurehead, right down to the part where he is dressed more like a Roman than an Israelite king. He's kinda, other people have the real power. He's just kinda here. No, just don't tell him that.
And naturally, Salome asks Herod for John the Baptist's head, and she gets it.
John is actually brought up to the party where Salome has asked for his head and beheaded in front of all the guests. And you can tell that Salome is not really used to seeing people die, as she screams when his head is cut off. To which I have to say, sweetie, what did you think was going to happen?
Well, I just thought they were going to gently remove his head from his body. I didn't expect blood.
You poor, poor thing.
This is to continue the trend of bad kings, showing that even those that don't have a lot of power still let it go to their heads.
Was that a pun?
Not a deliberate one. Look, a distraction. Let's talk about Peter.
All right.
What?
Well, this is kind of awkward. A lot of things that Peter is known for don't really happen in this movie on screen.
Oh.
Yeah, you kind of have to really, really, really pay attention to even pick up which one is Peter.
Like, even his denial of Christ is skipped.
Yeah.
The one time that I actually know which one is Peter is in the fishing scene. This is from the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus tells them to go out in their boats even though they've caught nothing all day. And they do, and they come back with so many fish that their boat starts sinking. We should probably let you know right now, this is the most miraculous thing that happens in the entire movie, and due to the way it's cut, you technically don't even see it.
Yeah, that's true. We really don't see any of the miracles in this movie. It's not so much that they don't happen per se. Oh, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get to that later.
Okay, so let's talk about Mary Magdalene then.
Yeah, we're kind of have the same problem here. And that is her. We see her as the woman who washes Jesus' feet in the house of Simon the Pharisee. But after that, she kind of just hangs around.
We're probably making this movie sound a lot more boring than it actually is. Okay,
Mm.
let's talk about somebody with the most dramatic potential, Judas.
Yeah, Judas doesn't really have a unique personality either.
You killing me, Smalls? Does he at least have a motive for his betrayal?
No.
Okay. Why?
That would be because in this movie, the individual personalities of the individual disciples really isn't the focus here. The collective body of the disciples. That is the main character.
Explain! Explain! Explain!
The passing along of Jesus' teachings through the disciples, that is more the focus of this movie. That's why we don't really see any of the miracles. The miracles are talked about and said. The disciples are telling the stories of the miracles, are even telling some of the familiar Bible stories, not even just the miracles, but just some of the day-to-day interactions of Jesus with people that we read about in the Gospels with other people. That is what this movie is about. The word is spreading through them during Jesus' lifetime.
You know, you have a point, because even when Mary Magdalene comes to wash his feet, we see an apostle talking to Simon the Pharisee,
Right.
Explaining Jesus' concept of being the Son of God, quoting Psalm 82.
86.
86. And that's, in the Gospel of John, that's on Jesus' lips, but here it's said by his student.
It's kind of like the butterfly effect.
Not that one. No, it's the butterfly effect, in that one action leads to another action, and so on, creating a larger impact. This is the way that Jesus changes the world, through his moral teachings.
Occasionally, Jesus movies will include the part where Jesus sends out the 12 to spread the word about him, but usually it's just one scene that happens, and then they all come back later, and then the rest of the movie is what happens afterwards. Here, the sending out of the 12 is basically the movie.
I like how even Mother Mary is in on this.
Yes, she is. Now, I gotta admit, when I first saw Mary telling one of Jesus' parables, I thought this movie was kind of going Mary, Mother of Jesus on me, where the whole movie was going to be about how his parables were stories that she told him as a kid. But no, this is not a flashback. Jesus is over here telling one story, and his mother just happens to be over here teaching another story. Now, part of my confusion might have had something to do with this actress who plays Mary doesn't really age a day from the Nativity to Good Friday.
Maybe she's just carrying the one ring with her.
But that's a minor nitpick.
She's also the one who says, "Forgive them, they don't know what they're doing" on Good Friday instead of Jesus. He's completely silent up on the cross. And she doesn't say it toward God, she says it to Mary Magdalene and Mark, who are with her.
Oh, hi, Mark. Yes, the Apostle Mark is here. I know. Technically, he's not supposed to be here yet.
Well, bear with me.
Okay.
They do depict him losing his tunic in the Garden of Gethsemane and running away.
You know, I think this is the only Garden of Gethsemane scene I can think of that includes that part.
Well, that scene only occurs in the Gospel of Mark. And there's a tradition that it's the evangelist's self-insert. It's a weird tradition, but it exists.
It's amazing to me how many traditions there are out there. I'm sure we're going to find many, many more as we keep going.
You have no idea.
Oh, I'm sure.
Let's backtrack to Mother Mary.
Oh, yeah.
She's also the person through whom we see the resurrection.
Mhm.
She comes up toward the tomb, sees some guards running past her, sees a woman who I assume is Mary Magdalene
Most likely Mary Magdalene.
run past her, and then she shows up to the empty tomb, and she kneels down at the entrance. Then some music plays that is the exact same music that played when 12-year-old Jesus said, "I must be about my Father's business." Then the camera pans up toward the sky, roll credits.
Actually, that is not a bad way to end the Jesus movie.
No. And again, it's not explicitly miraculous, but it is open to that interpretation. The point here is that this is the moment that provides the hope necessary to propel Jesus' teachings to continue beyond his death.
You know, speaking of his death, Caiaphas and Pontius Pilate. It's been pretty much established at this point that nobody in this movie, well, very few people in this movie really warrant a full category of their own. So we're just gonna lump these two together. So okay, Caiaphas.
Well, I mean, we see him with the Sanhedrin, and this is a Caiaphas that really has to work to get Jesus executed.
Yes, he does. He has to actually, he keeps having to send Pharisees out to bring back false witnesses during the trial. And then, my favorite part, when they take Jesus to Pilate, he has to actually go out and come back with a mob to start calling for Jesus' death.
Supplies! Get your angry mob supplies here!
I also appreciate this scene because the "give us Barabbas" bit has often been used to justify anti-Semitism. So to focus on it as the actions of just a few people, not the whole city of Jerusalem, much less the whole race of the Jews, is very nice. And not only is it these specific people, it's specific people that were rounded up for this one job. And I know we can't talk about anti-Semitism in every Jesus movie, but it's relevant this time, so let me have this. But Caiaphas wants Jesus executed because he knows that the Romans won't take kindly to someone claiming to be king. Which brings us back to the main theme, and boy does this work so much better than it did in the Judas Project.
Yes, it does. Probably helps that it's actually taking place in first century Israel. Okay, now Pilate here. I like this Pilate. This is possibly the best dressed Pilate I think I've seen in the Jesus movie so far.
Can't argue with that. So
So
I guess it's time to talk about the man of the hour, Il
Il
Messia.
Messia.
Since individual characterizations aren't really the focus here, you would think that this would be a bland and boring Jesus, right?
No, not really. No,
No, he's quite charismatic.
he
And
really is.
given this style of storytelling, that's more than enough to carry the movie.
I also like that he's a carpenter.
Stephanie, he's always a carpenter.
No. I mean, he's like doing carpentry in the course of this movie.
Oh.
The way this movie starts with Jesus' teachings, and this must be a neorealism thing. Jesus is doing his teachings while doing his day-to-day jobs, not just his carpentry, but fishing with the disciples. He's a blue-collar Jesus.
He's a Jesus of all trades, if you will.
He really is.
And it plays less like a man on a divine mission who sits on a mountain and dispenses wisdom to the people, and more like a guy who just shares some insightful stories with his friends while they're working. It's a very down-to-earth Jesus.
But then John the Baptist is executed. And Jesus' characterization shifts a little. He goes into high gear. Like, okay, fun time is over. Time to get serious.
He still does some carpentry work here and there, but his teaching takes on a life of its own. But even then, he doesn't go about claiming himself to be better than everyone else. Even his Sermon on the Mount is more like a moderately sized boulder that he's just talking to whoever happens to be passing by.
As opposed to a crowd of hundreds.
Right. That's a lot of the impact of Jesus' message here. The equality of everyone in the kingdom of God. He never uses this line, but he definitely operates under the quote from the Gospel of Luke, "The kingdom of God is within you." Stop deliberately misunderstanding me. It's very much egalitarianism by way of monarchy.
Ooh, that's a $5 word, isn't it?
$5 word. And now that we've talked about the stuff within the movie,
Let's talk about the bad part.
this movie is criminally under-recognized. To my knowledge, it has never gotten a DVD or Blu-ray release in our region or in English. With English subtitles, of course.
This movie is very, very hard to find.
There was an English subtitled VHS decades ago, but even that is incredibly hard to find.
And even if you can find it, you can't really watch it because VHSs aren't really a thing anymore.
My DVD copy is from Spain, and I can't even play it on any of my devices.
Yes. I want to recommend this movie so badly because this movie is easily a money's worth. This is a very, very good depiction of Jesus. But you can't find it anywhere. The screen caps that you've seen us use in this review are taken because somebody was generous enough to upload the whole thing to YouTube and supply the English subtitles themselves. Otherwise, you really can't find it. Yes, thank you to whoever it was who uploaded that video. I want to say that you should check it out for yourselves, but honestly, all I can say about that is, well, good luck.
Well, maybe one day Rossellini fanboy Martin Scorsese will make a release happen. Hey, Scorsese.
Thank you for joining us for Faith on Film. We'll see you next time. I'm Stephanie.
Yeah, Scorsese.
Oh, yeah, and he's Nathan. Bye.
Explain! Explain! Explain!
After his death... My phone went off.
Just start from after his death.
You had a line after that.
I do. I don't remember what it is, though.
Neither do I. Here, let's look.
Let's look.
Oh, boy.
I have a line, don't I?
Yes, you do.
I know what it is. It's one word. Okay, let's just do your line again. Our first selection was made in 1975 by Roberto Rossellini.
It's titled The Messiah, and then the holiday chorus starts again. I forgot the part about the kid taking the leak.
I think that's your next line. You haven't forgotten it. You just haven't gotten to it yet.
What's the end of that
I
line?
don't know.
That is the end of that line.
Well, then what's my line?